Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a Bellicose Charles Coulombe.
Bellicose? You mean like warlike?
Yeah.
Angry? Ready to lead orcs in charges against children's hospitals?
Well, I don't know if like that. That's a little weird, but...
Yeah, it is. Vampires against zombies or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. You know, this old planet is in war right now. On many fronts, not just military. I don't know if you recall, but some few years back, when Falling Skies, The Strain, and The Walking Dead were all out, they were all released around the same time. And so I thought to myself, our poor country. New England's being attacked by aliens. New York's being attacked by vampires. And Georgia is being attacked by zombies. I mean, that was pretty tough. See, how would it have been if the aliens had postponed their invasion by a year or two and found the planet overrun with zombies?
Well, that's easy pickings, I guess, right?
I guess. And how would the vampires have done with the zombies?
Yeah, that's true. Could a vampire feed off a zombie?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Wow.
I mean, you could probably rip him in two, but there's so many of them.
That's an interesting... Wow. So vampires would actually root for humanity, in a sense.
In a sense, yeah. So I mean, it's like you root for your livestock against the wild animals.
Yeah, that truly would be the case.
The vampires would have to set up special human zones so they could feed, but they'd have to keep off the zombies.
What a weird world.
But then the aliens would come in and clean all their clocks.
This is weird. This is like I watched recently this year. Was it Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies? That was a weird one too. Very different take on some of these characters. Darcy was a little bit different. Different rendition. Oh man.
Well, you remember Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer?
Oh, I still want to see that. I forgot to see that one.
That's a real classic of the genre. Mashups are what it's all about.
So there's a lot of different directions we can go. It's been a pretty wild week. I'm just going to give the reins to you, Charles, and...
See, I'm trying to get the week to calm down. To simmer down. All right, Nelly. There. Okay, now simmer down. That's a good old horse. That's right. It's okay now. Well, I suppose we should get the least important off first. And that, of course, is the upcoming Lord of the Rings thing, which I just was shown the poster for. You know what? Bye-bye. Just no. No.
Yeah, I just had to show Charles. Kind of like the Virgil complex, where you get so outraged, but then you show someone else, so you don't feel as bad.
Better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did it for me, and did it help? Do you feel better now?
I do, because I feel like you're carrying part of that burden, and like together, we can get through this.
I'm gonna send it to Axel.
It's like a pay it forward thing, with the Virgil complex.
Exactly. So you show your best friends hell, and laugh at their horror, and so you feel better. It's a good thing. it's like what they did to uh, poor Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah.
You know, my little baby munchkins, I realize that woke is in the air right now. But sooner or later, woke things are just going to stop making money.
Wait,
And
stop.
they
When
will
did they?
stop.
When did they ever make money?
Well, I suppose they don't. But all I can say is, accept no substitutes, no wokery. I mean, what? It's like you did a film set in 12th century Africa, in the Songhai Empire, and you decide you had to have a white character. Why? They're all black. Or if you did a one of these Japanese samurai pictures and felt, well, there's got to be a European. Yeah, but it's set in the 1100s, and there just weren't any Europeans in Japan. Well, there is in this one. He's blown off course, and he's a crusader. He's a crusading knight, and he matches wits with the samurai.
I would love to see that, just to give these people some of their, some of their own. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and of course, and it would be as ridiculous as possible. You know, I've come to find the true Holy Land, and he decided that Mount Fuji was really the Holy Sepulchre, and he wanted to free it. I mean, it's just utter crap.
yeah. So I
And
kind of
if
like, but yeah, I mean, with the poster, I kind of like it because everyone's. I didn't, but a lot of people had this certain curiosity, like, oh, is it going to be good? But now I think it's just going to be dead on arrival, honestly. So
yeah, and that's it. Now, the other difficult thing that occurred this week was, of course, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia.
yeah,
Now, I got to tell you, gang, it caught me by surprise. I did not think Uncle Vladimir was going to do it. I really did not imagine. I thought he might just try to do a quick snatch and grab with Donbass, with the easternmost portions of Ukraine. He might do that the way he did with Crimea. But a full-fledged invasion to initiate regime change, I did not expect that. And a lot of people said he was going to do it. They were right. I was wrong. But there is a lot of background here that I think really has to be understood. I met with an individual who will go nameless, but he's a member of a former sovereign house here in Europe 2 weeks ago, and he observed to me he knows a lot about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine beforehand, and he said he didn't understand why conservatives, especially American conservatives, had such sympathy for Putin. And what I explained to him, and he understood, was that the way things have worked out over the past few decades in the West, Putin, I mean, it was almost reduced to a choice of Putin or perversion. The rainbow flag or the Russian bear, what your choice? What are you going to call? And that was the way it was cast for a long time. With the people who were constantly sounding the alarm about Putin were also the people who were telling us how evil the Orange Man was without let up. And more importantly, the people who were telling us how terrible it is to be white, you know? And on the other hand, Putin uh, played his part in this simplistic drama himself by muttering all the right things in his various speeches. You know, um, it's also the fact that Russia does indeed have definite, so shall we say, security concerns regarding Ukraine. But I think we need to go back about 30 years to see where some of our current problems began. In 1991, the Soviet Union fell after the former satellite countries all got free. At that time, President Bush Sr. was our president, And he was one. He always used to say that he had trouble with the vision thing. I mean, he didn't have any vision. He was just sort of trying to be pragmatic or something. But what we should have done, unless you think I'm using 2020 hindsight, I so editorialized in Twin Circle and the National Catholic Register way back then. Was really needed was a Marshall Plan for Russia and Central Europe to help them recover from the decades of communism. And they needed to be wholeheartedly welcomed once more into the family of nations. I was very vocal about that then, to the degree that anybody read my stuff. And I wasn't the only one by any stretch. Much better uh, and more informed writers than myself made the same point. But those were ignored, and instead, the Russians were given a number of slights down along the way. And of course, as our society got more and more corrupt and stupid over the past 20 years, Putin arose and, as I say, talked a good game. And one that he was perhaps partially sincere in, or maybe entirely sincere in. But the fact remains, however you cut the dice, however you roll the cards, those are mixed metaphors. However you do that, he invaded Ukraine. And mind you, Ukraine has not applied to join NATO. They have not got an admission date for NATO. There are no Western missiles deployed there. And it just, to put this in, shall we say, a less emotional because more historical context, my family on both sides were very much America firsters. We're talking now about under the reign of President Roosevelt. Now, Roosevelt, once World War II broke out, was very keen in getting the United States into that war for several reasons. But the majority of Americans were against it. And so the America First Committee was founded in 1940 to try to counter his bellicose intentions. Anyway, it's certainly true that having failed to get Hitler to declare war on us, Roosevelt pushed the Japanese, and he pushed them, and he pushed them, and he pushed them. He refused to deal with any of their attempts at peace conferencing. And there is a school of thought that holds that he was not there to attack. And almost everyone agrees that he realized he pushed them into a corner, but his apologists believe that he thought they'd only attack the Philippines. Others claim that he knew all about the attack on Pearl Harbor, the imminent attack on Pearl Harbor, and that why A, he had the aircraft carriers sent out to sea, and B, the battleships, which we wouldn't have used anyway, put in the most vulnerable manner possible. I don't know if that's true, of course, but this is what I do know. No matter how far we push the Japanese, and I believe that that was very wrong to do, they did actually launch Pearl Harbor. They actually fell for the bait. They did the thing. Even the commanding officer of the Japanese fleet, Admiral Yamamoto, thought that this was a horrifically terrible and stupid thing to do. But out of duty, he did what was ordered of him. And my father enlisted to fight in that war, not least because we had, after all, been attacked. All right. So Ukraine, however, of course, is not the United States.
So what are you? You're doing a parallel, obviously.
I
So
am
like
I am doing a
Ukraine was
parallel.
sort of bait.
Well, no, I'm saying Ukraine, no matter what real or imagined provocation Putin had, and again, I don't know really. Everyone else seems to know. Everyone else seems to know completely exactly everything that's going on. I am afraid that I have been denied this knowledge. But what I'm saying is, regardless of what was happening behind the scenes, regardless of whether, as some claim, Bauchi's bio weapon labs were in Ukraine and were taken out in the first wave of missiles, I don't know. What I do know is that just as the Japanese, at the end of the day, no matter how provoked they were, they did attack Pearl Harbor. Putin has, in fact, invaded Ukraine. You can hate the Ukrainian government, you can think this, you can think that, uh, but he has invaded it. Now, I have to agree with Colonel Lindbergh that these wars in Europe are not our wars, us being the United States. Um, but I certainly believe in supporting Ukraine to the best of our abilities, uh, short of war. The Ukrainians are fighting a very, very tough fight right now. And from what I've gotten on social media and various other things, it's not going as well for the Russians as they had hoped. Um, there's the fear that the longer if their timetable is severely upset, they'll resort to much more unpleasant weaponry. I don't know. So there's several possibilities. One is that the Russians will successfully defeat the Ukrainians and impose a government like Belarus's, a neutralist government under their control. If this government is seen by the Ukrainians as a puppet government, then there doubtless will be an ongoing guerrilla war. Which, I mean, you figure the Ukrainians carried on guerrilla warfare against the Soviet Union for 12 years after World War II. I mean, they're tough people. They're very tough people. They're very like the Russians, to be honest with you. So, uh, I any drawbacks, any weaknesses in the Russian military will be made manifest by this adventure, which is their biggest effort since Afghanistan. And you can be assured that American and other intelligence services will be looking at it very, 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 very carefully. So we'll know a lot more about the Russian armed forces than we did, both their strengths and their weaknesses. Now, it may be somehow that they will be defeated, that it's too much of a political risk or whatever for Putin. I don't quite see how that would happen, but there's obviously a lot I didn't see and can't see, so who knows? There's certainly a good deal of opposition to this war in Russia, although whether that opposition will go anywhere, I don't know. What I do know is that he has committed himself so much to this war that if Putin loses it, it's very difficult to see how he'll stay in charge in Russia. So he's got a tiger by the tail. Now, it might be thought by some that either his immediate overthrow or, in fact, the implosion of Russia as a great power is a good thing. Don't be so sure. There is China. Now, China and Russia are allied in this Shanghai Pact. but they have some inherent issues between them that can never go away. Not least of them being the fact that Siberia is empty and China's not. Uh, it is an age-old Chinese fear that, a Russian fear rather, that China will want to retake her former territories in Siberia, and I don't think that that is an unjust or uh, impossible fear. Um, if he doesn't succeed, then Russia's, I think, is in for instability and possibly regime change. If he does succeed, there'll be reverberations throughout Europe and the West because if our sanctions, etc., are shown to be pointless and meaningless, well, that will be a blow that'll be very hard for us to recover from in a lot of ways. One thing I think you'll probably see out of this is the Central European nations, uh, building up their armed forces tremendously. Poland has already declared it's going to double its defense spending. And you will probably see them pull together rather more than they have. Obviously, the Italians, you'll pardon my saying this, boss, but the Italians said that they wanted to exempt the export of diamonds to Russia out of any sanctions.
It's pretty okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just, what do you say to that? No, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's awful. They're invading, but the diamonds are still. We got a deal going there. I mean, we got a real market for our diamonds. I mean, it's a terrible thing. They invade Ukraine. Okay, so it's a bad deal, but look, we got diamonds to sell. They're gonna buy them. I mean, what's the matter here? You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, here in Austria, we're dependent on them for oil. So, I mean, there's the two sides can do each other a lot of damage. But it's important to remember that our current bout of unpleasantry with Russia goes back to the summer of 2013, not 2014 when they nicked Crimea or intervened in Syria. 2013 was the first time since the fall of the Soviet Union that Russia and the United States were at loggerheads. Do you remember what that was for?
Tell us, Charles.
Moscow passed an anti-LGBT propaganda law forbidding children to be taught about homosexuality.
So in 2016, there actually was. I actually talked about this on the show. I remember when it was happening because Oliver Stone was really, really scared that we were going to go to war with Russia, especially if Hillary was in. I think, right? Because this was before the election.
Yeah.
Hillary was getting that, and to Putin's credit, I felt he said something very intelligent, at least for the social thing, which was that he passed the law because he didn't want people or children biased in that direction. He wanted to give them, free choice. Like he didn't want to push everybody because children obviously are very can be influenced very easily. And so that sounded reasonable to me in that area, but a lot of other things in contrast in those interviews. I don't know if they're still on Netflix or not, but there's a lot of shady stuff in retrospect now that he said on there. So,
well, I mean, the sad truth of the matter is that Putin had a lot of, if not outright support, a lot of people who were generally friendly toward him in the West. And he'll have lost a lot of that by doing this.
That's what I'm really eager to ask you. I don't understand the cost benefit. Like, it seemed like he stood so little to gain, and then he put everything in jeopardy. I don't
That's
understand
well.
it.
That's honestly, I don't either. Uh, it seems to me that he had everything. This sort of waiting game he's played for so long. It seemed to me he had everything to benefit from. But doubtless he had his reasons, and perhaps we'll find out what they are. But my heart is very, very heavy with this,
Yeah.
um, because really, it is the end of the post-Soviet order. The 30 years that we've had, or 31 years, since the fall of the Soviet Union, of a relatively unipolar world, is over. And now we're going into a new Cold War. Who knows? The other interesting thing, too, that makes you wonder, uh, as I say, India, of course, is a Russian ally. Russia's been cozying up to China. But at the vote on this in the Security Council, Russia predictably vetoed the passage of the resolution condemning the attack. But China and India and the United Arab Emirates abstained from voting. They
Mm.
didn't vote with Russia. Now, that really, really puts them on a limb. And of course, the damage that may be done to Russia's economy by their exclusion of the banking system and things like that. I mean, they can do Western Europe a great deal of damage in terms of cutting off the oil. But that can be made up from other sources eventually. You'll probably see the American and Canadian oil industries explode.
Yeah, I would be really, really scared to be a Ukraine citizen, but also a Russian citizen,
Oh, yeah.
because I feel like perhaps Putin did something that none of the citizens asked for. You know?
No, and that's something else that's been pointed out. All of his other snatch and grabs in Georgia, Armenia, and so forth have had the support of a majority of the population.
Yeah.
This thing is different.
Yeah. And but also too, but not only that, you've got, I mean, what would life be like after Putin, right? Like, what's the succession? Like, when
Uh,
you don't have a good succession plan, that's really scary to me, right?
right now, the favored son is the chief of the army, who's a Tuvinian, comes from a little part of Siberia called Tuva on the Chinese border. He's a Buddhist,
Okay.
but um, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. Um, but the last point I'll make that we have to remember is that Russia was the first country to legalize abortion back in 1918, but it's become the way of life for everybody. Every country in the world loves its infanticide, and we have tolerated that and innumerable other evils. I mean, stop and think about this for a second. Back 30 years ago, whenever it was, that the Chinese government brought in their one-child policy.
Yeah.
What do you say about a government that has that kind of power over its people and that would do something like that?
Yeah.
But you'll notice nobody had any real ethical issues with it in the West. Our leadership, so it didn't keep them from making money. We had no problem with it. So it's very difficult to find good guys and bad guys in all of this.
Yeah. Um.
I mean, my deepest sympathy goes out to the Ukrainian people who are fighting this war, and B to the poor Russians who've been sent to fight it.
Yeah.
Supposedly, their casualties at this moment outnumber the Ukrainian pretty severely.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, why didn't Ukraine join NATO? I mean, wouldn't that have gotten them more protection from Russia? You know?
Well, uh, you've got to bear in mind that Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, and it's very closely connected to uh, it's very, very closely connected to Russia ethnically, culturally, and so on. So part of Russia's retreat from the Warsaw Pact countries was our agreement that NATO would not expand into the former Warsaw Pact, but we did.
I see.
So for Ukraine to go into NATO, now mind you, at one point it was suggested that Russia join NATO. I would have been all for that, and in fact said so at the time. Nothing would have been better than an equal partnership with Russia.
Well, again, one of Putin's big things that he was frustrated about. It seemed like that's why he did the interview. It was so dominant in his talk to Oliver Stone. Was that he felt like the only purpose of NATO is to put pressure on Russia.
Well, see, that's true. And the thing is, NATO, in my humble estimation, NATO was created to stop the advance of communism. In 1991, so far as I'm concerned, that was the end of that. And we should have done one of two things. Either pick up our marbles and go home and let NATO transform into, the military equivalent of the EU or whatever without us. And maybe, and with or without Canada, depending, that's their call, not ours. Or, contrary-wise, invite Russia to join. It seemed to me, those were the two possibilities we had going for us. Now, what we did instead was used it to retain American hegemony. And that why?
All right. So we've covered a good deal of this. I think the last part perhaps is let's look at the possible outcomes, to the extent that you can. I know you don't have your crystal ball, all right?
No.
And there's a lot of moving parts.
Despite my reputation, I can't foresee the future.
So there's a great deal of moving parts. So it's not a linear thing here. But so let's look at a couple of outcomes. So let's say, one of the things that you told me before the show was that every day that passes and Russia has not secured a surrender from Ukraine, it's that much worse for Russia.
Yep.
There's a clock.
There's a clock. They have a timetable. And the further, now I don't know what that timetable is, but I'm sure that they figured it would be quicker than this.
Yeah. So let's say they're not. Let's say a month, 2 months go by, and they haven't secured Ukraine. Well, do they just go back to Russia with their tail between the legs, or?
Personally, I find it difficult to think that that Ukraine can hold out that long. Maybe they can. I don't.
Okay.
Let me give you the possible outcomes of what I think are likeliest to the least likely.
Yeah.
The most likely, I think, is that they will prevail. The Russians will prevail in the next week and install a client regime in Kiev, and probably annex the Donbass. Now, that's what I think is like this. However, if that happens, they will probably have to deal with a great deal of guerrilla warfare for God knows how long. The forest brethren, as the Ukrainians call their post-World War II fighters, that spirit, given what they're doing now, that spirit has not died in Ukraine. I think that's the likeliness, but there are other possibilities. They may be able to hold out to the point, if the Western sanctions are effective, if they bring Russia's economy to a halt, if continuing the war is more difficult than ending it, it will be very difficult for Putin to stay in power, I think.
How does their government even work?
Well, on paper it works like any other republic works, any other presidential republic. It's very much like the French Constitution, actually.
Okay.
Because there's a prime minister and cabinet, but a very strong president, as opposed to a merely ceremonial one. But there are other factors at work, particularly the army. If the army get a really black eye over this thing, their first tendency, and not just with Russia, but with so many places around the world, will be to blame the civilian leadership that put them in that position in the first place. So that in turn will lead probably to one of two outcomes. It may lead to a lot of instability in Russia, which, as I've said, it may sound like a nice thing, but it's not. And a post-Putin regime might either A, retreat further into itself to try to build itself up, go nuclear in a big way, and so forth, or they may look eastward and see that China is the big threat and try to patch things up with the West. Now, the West, as I say, I think this has definitely been a wake-up call for Central Europe, without a doubt. The Baltic states, Visegrad, Romania, these countries, I think, may very well try to pull themselves into something or other, which will in turn have repercussions in the West. Western Europe, whatever happens.
I don't understand what you just said. So Russia going into Ukraine is a wake-up call for Romania. Romania is going to do something that's a wake-up for the West?
It's a wake-up. No, let me be clear. It's a wake-up call for Central Europe, which includes Romania. The Visegrad countries, which are Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, and Hungary. The Baltic states, which are Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. In other words, basically all the countries that border Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. And possibly even it might push Finland and Sweden into going into NATO. But it would certainly get the countries I've mentioned, who are already exploring various forms of regional cooperation within and outside of the EU, to pull together into a stronger bloc.
Oh, I see.
Because on the one hand, they still have Russia to look after, and on the other, they can't really depend on Western Europe. And that brings us to Western Europe. They, depending on how this thing goes, their governments will continue down the same road they're going down. Remember that they have the Islamic issue, which, coupled with the Russian resurgence, and governments that have effectively managed to do nothing about both, may lead to a great deal of, as you might say, regime change. In France, for instance, they're saying things about the Muslims and all that would never have been said 5 years ago or 2 years ago. Zemmour, the candidate for the French, they've got several, but one of the right-wing candidates for the French presidency. He's a Jew from Algeria, but he's very, very right-wing, and he says that France has to maintain its Christian heritage.
Okay.
And as opposed to being Muslimized. And so it's people like that may go a lot further in the wake of all this stuff. And then we've got the United States. You know, I think one of the reasons Putin thought that he could get away with this is that we really have a senile guy and Madame Pompadour at the helm of state. But as you know, our situation is very, very volatile right now. We have the congressional elections coming up, and there'll be a lot of arguing over who lost Ukraine. Even at the moment, a lot of the the thing is the Democrats, and again, one can't help but notice that when Russia was communist, the Democrats were very dovish. When it became this weird kind of quasi-conservative, then they became very, very excited about it. A lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans are saying, "Well, that's all nice, Ukraine. What about Montana? What about our borders? What about our country going down the tubes? Should we be focusing on that?" So things like this are going to play a big role in the congressional election this year. I don't think whatever Biden does, it will never be seen. It'll always be seen as not enough or too much. He really has a tiger by the tail himself in this thing. It's probably just as well that he's senile because it isn't as painful as it would be.
That's nice.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you were in his shoes, wouldn't it be driving you crazy?
Probably.
Yeah, but if you were a bit senile, you just sit back and forget about it. Not a problem. Until somebody reminded you. I mean, I saw his speech when Putin invaded. And the speech was, it was all right. It was whatever. But at the end, he said, "God bless Ukraine and save our troops." And I thought, oh, yeah, but we don't have any troops in Ukraine. And why he sent them there and then took them out again, I don't know what that was about.
Anyhow, I don't know. I'll just close this segment
Section
with just reminiscing on again something we were talking about before the show, Eric von Kuehnelt-Leddihn, where there's three forces in history. And what are they?
Well, they are catastrophe and conspiracy, and those two, every historian agrees on. What they disagree about is how much of each are present in any given historical event. How much was conspiracy? How much was catastrophe? But von Kuehnelt-Leddihn pointed out that there's a third element which is just as powerful as the other two, and never, ever, 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 ever gets its due from historians, and that is stupidity. And he did a picture of this big, gigantic creature, gibbering mouth, idiotic face, and he called it "Stupidity Stalking the Globe."
And I can't help but think back to that with all these changes in the world, because I always think it didn't need to be like this at all.
No, it didn't. It didn't. And conspiracy is kind of comforting because it gives the feeling that there's a master plan that really brilliant people are carrying out. It may be evil.
No.
But that's an in a sense, an easier world to live in than the idea that we're ruled in almost every country by a bunch of evil, insane dimwits.
It's very true, right? It's almost like, yeah, well, there's this game, the game of power up top, all the conspiracies, all it's over my head, but that's life. I
And
can
it
see
makes me
that.
feel better. It makes
Yeah,
me feel better. It also relieves me of responsibility.
that's true.
That's another great thing. But if you inject stupidity into the equation, I think the whole issue becomes a lot more realistic, a lot truer to life. And the historian, he's always trying to be as close to reality as he can, which you can never really do because you can't be everywhere at once to know everything that ever happened. You can try, though. Uh, the admission of the role stupidity plays, I think, makes the whole thing much more realistic,
I think so
if
too.
if much less comforting.
And it's also an indictment on these quote unquote democratic countries, you know,
Well, yeah.
because like everybody, like we keep voting for the stupid people. It's not this game above us. It's just, I don't know, we're always trapped in the same web all the
Well,
time.
but bear in mind, we can only vote for what we're presented with. And bear in mind, too, that if someone isn't part of that, both for financial reasons and through the media, which would crucify them, they'll never get anywhere anyway. If the system were accepted for what it is, it would actually far more quickly become better. In other words, if people accepted the fact that their leaders don't give a damn about them and don't care, then they could turn around on it. I don't care either. Tax strikes. How about that, smart guy? Could you imagine if the bishops of the United States back in 1973 had called for Catholics to participate in an income tax strike on abortion? You can talk about all your legalities, your constitution. You can do whatever you want, but you're not getting our money. You have the power. You guys decide what you want. We understand that. But if you want our funding, you're not going to do that.
It's pretty cool. That would have been pretty cool.
Well, it would have forced the system, the way COVID did, to expose itself.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. No. See, we understand. Your Supreme Court passes anything the way it wants to do. We get that. That's fine. You have to decide whether it's worth using a presidential override on Roe v. Wade or dealing with a tax strike. That's your call, Mr. Nixon. How do you want to play it? And you know how we know that he could have done that?
How?
It's the same way Bush did it at Guantanamo. Presidential override. They will do those things when it's important to them. So what do? You make it important to them. That's why I say, even as late as 73, a good chunk of the Catholic population would have responded to that kind of a call. And if the bishops had pulled themselves together like men, I know, I use the M word, but if they had, and given this ultimatum to the president, now mind you, the political outrage would have been enormous. But if people understood what the system really is, they wouldn't have cared. Oh, we're going to look bad. Oh, instead of babies dying, we'll look bad. Oh, I get it. It's so horrible. But you see, we're not trained to think that way. We're not trained to think at all. And why should we be? This is a conspiracy, but it's well known that the more ignorant a population is, the easier they are to rule.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a very educational and interesting segment, Charles. Thank you for showing us the ropes on this matter. Now,
And bearing in mind that I was completely blindsided by the invasion, so take everything I've said with a grain of salt. And if it turns out that I don't know what I'm talking about, I won't be surprised.
well, then we'll destroy you. All right.
Ooh, can I get canceled too?
That's how we do in this modern age.
Cancel me. There's somebody on Twitter, I forget who, but he gives his name and it says self-canceled.
It's you've said it to me and it really hits the nail on the head. It's so easy to destroy, and it's so hard to build up.
Yep. It is, but look at it this way: when you're destroying, at least you're doing the devil's work. What? Look at the good side.
Oh. All right. Time. Too much heavy topics right now. Okay, we have to balance this show out with the memes of production.
Oh, nationalize the memes of production
for the common good. All right, we have a special one submission from your godson, and he wanted me to open the show with this, but he's not a patron, so I don't dance for non-patrons as a rule. Yep, as a rule, I'm gonna stick to my principles. Okay.
Oh, but your principles being only paying guests can get what they want. That's your principle. You can't surrender your principle that you stay bought. I get it. That's really wonderful. So basically, my poor little godson, a starving doctoral candidate, he gets bupkis, even though he's my godson.
It's out of my hands. That's part of the system. It's pay to play, Charles. I don't make the rules.
No, you just guide them. I get it. I suddenly, if I can find it, I think the lyrics of a song from Leonard Cohen are helpful at this point.
Okay.
You remember Leonard Cohen?
1920s?
No. He just died about 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay, I have no idea then.
Well, the best the best song that he knows, the best song that he's known for is Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Okay.
But this is called Everybody Knows. And it goes, everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Everybody knows the war is over. Everybody knows the good guys lost. Everybody knows the fight was fixed. The poor stay poor, the rich get rich. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows that the captain lied. Everybody got the sinking feeling like their father or their dog just died.
Wow, this guy.
Okay. Yeah. That's dear old Leonard Cohen. God rest him.
Wow. That's pretty epic. All right. Anyhow, we'll get to your godson's thing here. Okay, so he wanted me to say good evening and welcome to another episode of Off the Menu with depilated Charles Coulombe, and then show this picture of bald young Charles Coulombe.
Which never existed. That it makes it look like Sinead O'Connor, frankly. Or Muhammad Al Abdul or whatever. Now she's a Muslim now,
whatever. I don't care. These people,
What?
it's chaos. It's just pure chaos. Just do whatever you
Sinead
want and
O'Connor's spiritual quest.
just do
Doesn't that
whatever you
mean
want.
something
Just
to
but
you?
just don't be so loud, Just tone
Well,
it down a little bit.
but that's the point. If you're an exhibitionist, or
Whatever.
it's
So
as Nick Smith tells us in Metropolitan.
what does he say?
He says playing strip poker with an exhibitionist kind of blows the whole point of the thing.
That's a good one.
That's
All
very
right.
true. I mean, why are you bothering?
All right. So thank you for the submission. That's quite some photoshopping, to be honest. That was really impressive.
Well, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Ruru is one brilliant guy.
For sure. For sure.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, for being brilliant.
Yeah, I don't blame him for that.
Yeah.
It's not his fault.
Yeah. All right, some other fun quotes here from some comments on YouTube and from some patron comments. Connor says, hold on. So Charles knows the complexities and intricacies of monarchy and the faith, knows meme culture, knows practically everybody famous on some level, and yet he didn't know Bob Ross? Is Bob Ross from the 13th floor?
Bob Ross, that's ridiculous. Bob Ross... I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
Well, yeah, Bob Ross.
Oh, Bob Ross. Yeah, I know who Bob Ross is. I met Bob Ross here in the Tumbler House Tower building one time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about again?
We're doing the memes of production, Charles. We're just going through what people say.
Oh,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. All right. So, moving along, as we do, Jesse said something. So that this ongoing, conflict, if you will, between St. Louis pizza and other types of pizza. I guess it's really heated debate.
I'll tell you what, the UN, the Congress, the House of Commons, any of these places, they may be dealing with questions of wars and rumors of wars. But here at Off the Menu, we deal with the real questions facing the planet. And the preferred variety of pizza, ladies and gentlemen, lives have been lost over less, I assure you.
Is Chicago going to war with St. Louis over pizza? For pizza
Oh, I'll tell
supremacy?
you what, I wouldn't want to live in Alton, Illinois, between the two. I'd be afraid. I'd be like Ukraine, I'd be hiding somewhere. When the Chicago and St. Louis boys go to get into it over pizza, forget it.
So Jesse says, whoever trashed Emo's pizza must already be in hell because every slice is a little piece of heaven.
Gosh, I sure hope he's getting a salary from Emo.
That's a pretty strong. That's a strong statement right there.
There's a boy love his pizza. That's. What would you say the best pizza in LA is? Nobody thinks of LA as a pizza center.
For my money, it's Petrillo's. I love Petrillo's. Oh, it's so good. The pepperoni,
what's your favorite?
The cheese.
More than Domenico's?
Domenico's is good. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, Domenico's is fine. I wouldn't begrudge you. I mean, why can't pizza lovers live in peace? You see?
No, I think they should. A piece of pizza.
Oh, there you go. There.
But the question I have for you now, we have Petrillo's and Mama Petrillo's.
Mama Petrillo's that's fake. I mean, that's not real Petrillo's. Yeah.
But are they connected, or were they ever connected?
I don't believe so.
You see, it's funny, but the Ernie's taco restaurants.
Yeah.
Well, there were 6 now. I think there's only like 1 left, or maybe it's closed with COVID. But there were 6, owned by Ernie and his wife. Well, they had an unpleasant divorce around '62, and the result were 2 separate chains. The 6 restaurants 3 of them stayed Ernie's, and the 3 the wife took became Ernie's Jr. And so late as 2000, 2005, whatever it was, there was one in Pasadena. And that one in Pasadena was of some importance because our friend Gary Potter, when he was a student at the Pasadena Playhouse, wooed his future wife there, Virginia.
Wow.
Yep. And so when now Gary came out to California several times. He never told me this. I'm in Washington. I'm chatting with Virginia, and she's reminiscing about their days. He says, "Yeah, he took me out to Ernie's taco or Ernie Jr.'s. Is it still there?" And it was then. So the next time Gary came out, I made it a point of taking him to Ernie Jr.'s, and he assured me that it looked exactly the same as when he and Virginia used to go there.
That's nice.
Yeah. So Gary is still with us in Frederick, Maryland. So keep him in your prayers.
Will do. All right. Last comment is from Laura Lay, superfan Laura Lay.
Oh.
Thank you for those sticky notes, Laura Lay. By the way, I appreciate them very highly. It's kind of a little joke because people who order, if I fulfill them personally, I give them a little love note. So Laura Lay refilled my supply. So she says Charles's response to the question of the next Italian monarch was one of the best segments ever. I'm sorry if there was anyone who's bored or uninterested. Gosh, you go, Charles.
Ahem. I said ahem.
Oh,
ahem.
Wait, I actually kind of made a mistake. This was actually for a pre-show segment in which Charles was asked who he thought would be the heir to the Italian monarchy. And it's a very complicated question, so he literally spent a half an hour mapping it out. That pre-show was like an hour long, so if you're non-patron, there's nothing to see here. Move along, unless you're interested in the segment and becoming a patron. For as low as $5 a month, you can get your questions asked, most likely anyway. Early access to the full episode. Normal, we're waiting for Mondays. We usually film on Saturday and post it on Saturday or Sunday. And then you have access to the pre-shows. And not only that, access to every pre-show that's ever been. I think we've done nearly like 100 pre-shows now. So you're unlocking like dozens of hours of content. Including this one right here, where Charles answers who he thinks is the heir to the Italian monarchy and goes into detail for 30 minutes.
La 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 la.
There you go.
It's got nothing to do with Giovinezza. That was the Italian fascist song. So it has nothing to do with the heir of the Italian monarchy. But it is a very involved question.
Yeah. Clearly it was. A lot going on there. All right, that's it for the memes.
I was about to say something about Italy.
Oh, you can always talk about Italy, Charles.
I figured that'd be good. Yeah. Well, no, it's just way back in 1996 with Brother Leonard Mary, his sister Marie Pomelo, their cousin Mary Kraft, and young Tim Feeney. I went on a European tour, and we went to Venice. So we're on a gondola. And the gondola, because it was a very touristy gondola, the gondolier who was, making the thing go, but there was also an accordionist, and he was taking requests, the old native Italian favorites like When the Moon Hits Her Eye Like a Big Pizza Pie, and,
yes,
the native folk songs of the region.
Okay, clearly, okay.
Especially in Venice, because to me, what you see back in old Napoli, there's a bit of a difference between Naples and Venice. But he was fully prepared to play that kind of crap if we wanted it. We didn't, so he didn't. But I did ask him. Rather, this is 96, so World War II veterans still had jobs. They weren't just relics in old age homes.
Sure.
So I asked him, I said, could you play the Mozzarella, the Royal March, which was the old anthem? And he said, well, I know it perfectly. He said, I can't play it on the accordion, but I know it. He said, he said this in Italian, but I understood him. He said, I was a soldier of the king, but now we have a spaghetti republic. They all eat, they all drink, and they all belong in carcere, in prison.
Wow.
And so afterwards, brother says to me, only you would have gotten us a monarchist accordionist.
Wow. A spaghetti republic.
That's right. They all eat, they all drink, and they all belong in prison.
Wow. How do you find these people? It's like I don't know how you do this,
Sheer
Charles.
random.
Eastern Europe, you're hanging out and you find like the few Criswell fanatics in all of Eastern Europe.
That was same thing, purely happenstance. God watches over me. He guides me into these situations.
Clearly.
It's like on that same trip, we had a very chic middle-aged lady who was our guide at Notre Dame Cathedral. And when I say our guide, we're talking about a whole crowd of people, Americans and a few Australians. But she says, Louis XVI was our last king, whom we murdered, and we have had no one better ruling us since. Now over here, and she would drop these bombs. I mean, apropos of nothing, and she'd just say them and then move along. And when we're going in the cathedral, we pass the confessionals, and she says, "These, of course, are the confessionals which are no longer used, so that no one any longer goes to confession and no one has any faith." Now over here,
what? Really?
yeah, she just dropped a bomb and moved on.
Did you
And
chat
she
with
didn't
her
allow.
afterwards and see what's going
What's
on
that?
with her? Did you chat with her
I
afterwards?
didn't know she raced off, so I never found out what his story was.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It was. She was really, really a lot of fun. We had some pretty good guides. We had a terrible guide though in Vienna.
Yeah.
And this chick was Hungarian. She was a Magyar, but very. And mind you, I love the Hungarians, but this one was a definite exception. And she disliked me from the minute she saw me.
Oh.
That happens. So we're going along the Ringstrasse on the way out to Schönbrunn and the palace. We pass by the old war ministry, which is now other things. She says, and there on your right is the old war ministry. Of course, today Austria is a republic and a democracy, so we no longer have a war ministry, but a ministry of defense. As if there was some connection between getting rid of the monarchy. And I mean, and I just started laughing. And she said, "Why are you laughing? That was not a joke." And I said, "Oh, yes, it was, and very funny." But she didn't appreciate that. So we get to Schönbrunn, and we take the long tour, and we go to what's called the Blue Chinese Salon, where Kaiser Karl signed away, not he didn't abdicate, but he renounced. He ruled in the immediate. And I guess I didn't look very happy because after she tells the story, I'm standing there, and she says, "Oh, are you an aristocrat that you are unhappy by what transpired in this room?" And I looked at her. I said, "Ma'am, firstly, I'm an American, so I'm incapable of being an aristocrat. And secondly, the only people who would be happy for what happened in this room are the Nazis and the communists. Are you a Nazi or a communist, ma'am?" That was the end of it. She gave me a dirty look. Everybody looked kind of nervous, and we walked out. Well, the next thing. I'll never forget that trip as long as I live. A lot of things happened. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Next time you see Tim Feeney, buttonhole him.
Okay. Yeah.
Milk the stories out of him. That was his first trip abroad.
Yeah, I think he got off the sinking ship. He got out of Dodge, I thought.
He left California.
Yeah.
Everybody be leaving,
Yeah. Well,
but not me. Oh,
it's okay. I'll be this. I'll carry on alone the legacy of Junipero Serra.
yes, I know. And you'll turn out the lights.
All right.
I can see it now. Governor Newsom. Who are you? I'm Vinnie Franchini. What are you doing? I'm turning out the lights, Your Excellency. You turn off the lights of the Capitol building. That's it. California's over now. All done. It's
Like
all
that.
gone. But I'm governor. Uh, there's nothing to be governor of. California's over now. Perhaps Your Excellency would like to retire to someplace that still exists. But I'm
Oh man.
important. Governor, no. And you know, since you no longer have a state to preside over, it's only a courtesy title anyway. So get moving, Gavin.
That's beautiful. If only. One can dream.
That strange stars, that is not dead which doth but sleeping lie, and with strange eons even death itself may die.
Wow, is that Hamlet?
No, it's H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, is it? Oh wow, it almost sounded Shakespearean.
Well, that's not shocking. Guess what he cut his teeth on? In his house at Rillia, great Cthulhu lies sleeping.
Wait, what? Wait, you lost me on it. Who? What did he cut his teeth on?
Shakespeare. He read a lot of Shakespeare. When Lovecraft grew up in a household with a huge library that was heavy in 16th, 17th, and 18th century English literature. And he read it all, from Shakespeare to Sheridan to Addison and Johnson, just which really affected his style.
Yeah, clearly. All right, time for the questions. You know, this is a good old-fashioned long episode. It's an hour and 12 minutes, but you know what? We don't care. You guys have wanted a long show for, I don't know, for a year or so, and we haven't really given you one. This is going to be one. So
this is going to be one, and it's a wartime measure.
Yeah.
Look at this show being so long as being like zinc pennies, copper nickels, ration certificates, war bond drives. I mean, basically, we're digging in.
Exactly.
And this is a wartime measure. In case anyone thinks I'm being in poor taste, ladies and gentlemen, you gotta laugh or you'll cry.
Yeah.
You know, the last time I was close to a war was when we were bombing Serbia, and I was in Timișoara, Romania, and there I could see the fireworks and hear them.
Oh, well, so was that Milosevic? Was that
Yeah, that's where we were bombing Serbia. Yeah, and I could, you feel the shaking and see the fireworks and all that over the Serbian border. And of course, knowing that it was your own people doing it, really, a Russian friend of mine sent me a note, kind of crowing over the way things are going. This was last night. He didn't respond to my response, which was, take it from me as an American. Wars can be very easily gotten into. They're not always so easy to get out of. And I can understand that there's many an individual who supports what Russia has done for what appear to them to be good reasons. But I cannot, much sympathetic as I am and much as I love Russia, I cannot escape the fact that this is a snatch and grab. And the damage that's being done, the people that are dying, This didn't have to be. It just didn't. Um, this is why, when you cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war, you better know what you're doing. You better know what you're doing because people are going to die and things will be destroyed. I mean, Kiev is one of the great, I mean, other places like this elsewhere in Ukraine, but Kiev is one of the great cultural resources of Western civilization. And it would be so easy to totally wreck it. And that may well happen. That may well happen. People are stupid. You get a field commander who's extremely annoyed at the way the resistance is resisting. If they're holed up in the Cathedral of St. Sophia, lob a couple of shells into it. Why not? That's what happens in wartime. And of course, if they're shooting from the cathedral, what's he going to do? So I am going to make jokes, ladies and gentlemen. I will laugh and poke fun. It doesn't mean I'm unaware of the gravity of the situation. But you know what? Look at the way we're able to say, avoid thinking about the infanticide that we're all part of, or what the profanation of marriage that we've made a national hobby really, really means. Now we're able to put all that on the back burner and live our lives. We should be able to do this, do that with this too.
I see what you're getting at. We have our areas where we like to get outraged, and we have the areas that we've stifled.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that you can't live on constant outrage. You really can't. I mean, I speak as a French Canadian with the shadow of the conquest hanging over my head. And believe me, if you don't think some of my ethnic countrymen don't have that as a real present chip on their shoulder, you don't know the French Canadian. We really do. But it's something, you learn to live with, especially if you live in an English-speaking environment. What, am I supposed to go around all the time angry? Well, yeah, because then the woke people will get me money. Right?
Maybe.
Well, no, I'm just thinking, if they'll guilt all the white people for slavery, why can't all the English speakers be guilted for the conquest?
That's true.
I think it's a good thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, if those of you who feel the need to be guilted want to help assuage that guilt, send your money into me. All your easily liquidated assets, send them to me to help make up for what was done to my people at the conquest. And learn French. What?
All right.
What? You know what? You were with me until that last demand. Everything else was fine. They should be liquidating the real estate. They should be selling their artwork and sending me the cash. That was fine. But learn French. Oh.
Charles, that was a bridge too far for me.
Yeah. That was definitely, that broke the camel's back. The flat out extortion over an historical event, you were good with that. That was okay. But when it came to actually having to learn French, forget it. I understand. I see where you are now. It's okay.
Got me red-handed.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say, the immortal words of George Burns, the key to acting is sincerity. When you can fake that, you can fake anything.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to the questions.
Yeah, all right. We are going to start the questions with Andrew from New Jersey.
Hey, king of the Paramus Mall.
In parentheses, not from Berkeley. So he also self-identifies as not from Berkeley.
A lot of people like that these days. It's
Yeah.
amazing. You know, around here,
Mm-hmm.
I've found a lot of people who say they're not from Berkeley. Very
uh,
often in strange languages.
all right. He says, "Hello, gentlemen, and greetings from the Garden State. I have a few questions today, but first I want to just say that I really loved the segment a couple weeks back where Charles took us on a virtual stroll through Florida, or as we call it up here, Southern New Jersey."
Snowbird, take me with you and you go. Yeah, okay.
I'd love to hear Charles do this for even more states in our glorious union at some point. Oh, he actually did this for Alabama on the
Uh,
pre-show.
I
Another
sure did.
shameless
You
plug.
know, that might be fun though. A state of the week.
We could do that. We could.
But you know, to make it more of a challenge, don't tell me before the show. You decide. You pick the state. We've
State.
done Alabama and we've done Florida.
Okay, I'm writing
So
that down.
we have 48 states left. Um, so every week you pick a state. You don't tell me until the broadcast, so I'll tell you what I think is worth dealing with it.
All right. Should this be a pre-show thing, or should this be a full episode? Or you're probably full episode, right? We'll just.
Well, I mean that I would do that, but
Okay.
you call the shots here. Do you want that to be a special privilege for
I'm a
the
man of the
elite?
people. I'm a man of the people.
Oh, well, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
people like Officer Clancy.
well, it's nice to have those kinds of people.
I
You know.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, you know,
Agreeable people. You know.
of course. Whatever you say, sir. Sure, I'll take care of it. I wouldn't worry my head about it if I were you. It's it'll go away all of itself, as you might say.
There you go. All right. So he says, for my questions today, I'd like to get a little weird. Are you ready, Charles?
You know, you sure came to the right place, pal.
When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro.
Doing that.
Is that how it goes? That's how it goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. From our friend Hunter Thompson. Okay. So Andrew says, my first question is, what is the strangest thing that Charles believes that if a normal person heard, they would think twice about having you over for dinner? For example, the weirdest thing I believe is that dinosaurs are a psy-op. Wow. My second weird question is if Charles. Oh, okay. So let's do that one.
Well, let's do that one. Well, of course, I'm opening my up. You know, there's some people who are constantly listening, waiting for me to reveal something, some terrible, bizarre, occult belief.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to do it. Are you ready?
Ready.
Captain Kangaroo really was a captain in the U.S. Navy and commanded a battleship at Pearl Harbor.
That's not a belief. It sounds like more like a historical fact rather than a belief.
Well, no, it's a belief. He was a Marine enlistment. He had nothing to do with the Navy.
Wait, Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah.
His last name was Kangaroo?
No, you never heard of Captain Kangaroo?
I have no idea what you're saying. Are you making a joke?
No, well, sort of. Captain Kangaroo.
The way I read it is this was like some kiddie show person.
Yes.
Where it's a Captain Kangaroo, and in real life he was really in the armed forces.
Well, in real life he was a Marine enlisted man.
Yeah.
But hold on just a minute. Hold on. I'm going to do this for you.
Captain Kangaroo is an American children's television series that aired weekday mornings on CBS for 29 years, from 1955 to 1984.
That's right. And Captain Kangaroo was, that wasn't his real name, it was Keesham.
Bob
Bob
Keesham.
There you go.
Okay, Charles has clearly Skyped me something. I'm scared to click this.
No, go ahead. Don't be afraid.
You're gonna give me a virus, Charles.
No, I'm not gonna give you a virus. You'll be cold. As long as you're warm and cozy.
Oh, okay. I don't want to get flagged as copyright infringement on this show, so that's why I had to mute this. Okay. Very nice, Charles. Very nice. Vintage classic TV show. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I actually believe that he was a real captain in the Navy and commanded a battleship at Pearl Harbor.
So I'm disappointed in that answer. I mean, that's not a real answer. That's a fake answer. And it's not a cult in the least. So that's disappointing on two levels.
All right, hold on. I can do this. Oh, all right. I believe that if either of them exist, the UFO knots are probably fairies.
Okay, that's actually legitimate. Okay, that's good. That's kind of, yeah. All right.
Is that out there?
That's the good stuff. Yeah.
Maybe Bigfoot come from another dimension.
Okay. Wow. Okay, we're really getting out there now. Okay.
Well, the Coke over Pepsi.
I'm with you on that one. What? That's okay. Now we're talking.
Another weird belief. Are you ready?
What?
The weird belief I've got is that all of the anonymous trolls on Twitter actually lead secret lives of saintly virtue that they reveal to no one.
Wow.
And the nastier their comments, the more holy and saintly they are in real life.
Wow.
Nobody would want to have dinner with me after I said that. Bob is stock raving out of his head.
All right.
Keep that boy away from the knives. Don't give him a spoon to eat his dinner with.
All right. Another question is, he asks, have you ever heard of the conspiracy theory about the so-called Shadow British Empire? I can't find any real information on it, and I've only heard certain individuals online mention it in passing. But from their context, it appears to involve the British Empire never really ending, just transforming into a more covert system where Britain rules the world through manipulation and subversion via their national security apparatus and central banking. Can Charles tell us more about this conspiracy theory? If you cannot do so, may I make a humble plea to fellow off-the-menu listener Bonday Radio to make a video on this subject, as it seems like something he can really sink his teeth into. Perhaps you could have Tim Kelly and or Jesse Russell on to discuss. Wow.
Well, it was invented by Irish people, supporters of the IRA, who got very, very disappointed when the real British Empire collapsed. Because the feeling of no longer struggling against this worldwide menace was very painful. You know, they wanted to feel that somehow Britain was still a major power and they were still fighting the infinite. Now, that I suspect is where it had its origins. But it was picked up by a man called Lyndon LaRouche, who was a really interesting guy, the father of conspiracy theory and politics in a lot of ways. And he was right, left, and center. He started out with the Students for Democratic Society in the 60s. Then he formed what was called the U.S. Labor Party. And it became a real sort of cult, literally, LaRouche's. Um, and then he became a perpetual candidate for the Democratic Party for president. He'd always get defeated. Lyndon LaRouche, there's still LaRouches around, and they saw the world as a conspiracy between the so-called Black Guelphs who ran the British Empire and the Coptic Church, and they didn't like traditionalists or Carlists either. They put them. It was a weird mythology. They were the ones who attacked your brother and me in an article called "Who is Snuffing Your Neighbor's Kittens?"
Oh.
Yeah, that was the LaRouche thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I have attracted the attention of crazies my entire career. And when my father was still alive, it was back in '96, so it was shortly after my first bout of going through this. I asked him, I said, Dad, why am I called in? Why am I come to the attention of so many wackos? And he said, well, because you're not writing in the mainstream. And I said, well, if I were writing in the mainstream, would I be attacked by wackos? And he said, yes, but they'd be of a very different stripe. And they'd have more money.
Well, I mean,
So
given those two options, what would you prefer?
What I've got.
Okay, I figured.
Listen, my wackos have their conspiracy theories and their views of the world and all that. But you know what? They may occasionally make my life a bit hellish, but they don't count for anything. They're not responsible for the drivel under which we have to live. They're not. Let's put this another way. If you're in Congress, you're playing for keeps, and your opponents are pretty tough. If you're part of the worldwide stamp collecting fraternity and you have opponents, it's not going to be the same kind of thing. So I would much rather have the sorts of opponents I've got than to have the government after me.
That's true.
I would far rather have every odd conspiracy theorist accusing me of all sorts of evil than having the Internal Revenue going after
me. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, and mind you, the difference, of course, is that if the Internal Revenue ever did go after me, there wouldn't be much for them to take.
Yeah, well, that's what I tell people. Everyone's always so nervous. You do the best you can, be as honest as you can, and you're fine. They'll lose money if they're trying to audit you. I mean, okay, wow, you got $2 where that I miss. I did this Venmo transaction, and you really got me on that Venmo transaction. Oh, wow.
Yes, but you know what? It was worth every penny of the $1,700 we put into investigating it to get the $2 out of you. Pay up, smart guy.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah. So.
Oops.
Anyhow, okay, so that's good. All right. Andrew says, for my last question, I am also curious about another conspiracy theory known as the super mob conspiracy. From what I can tell, this involves elements of Chicago-based La Cosa Nostra, as well as the Jewish mafia, infiltrating various institutions, including Hollywood and even the federal government. Can Charles tell what he knows about the super mob and who the central figures were or are? Or perhaps Vinny would have a better idea because, well,
Well, first thing I can say, as an authorized spokesman of the Franchini family, I can say that no member of the family, since their arrival in this the fair land of freedom from Italy, has ever had anything to do with anything of that sort. And I can say without a shadow of contradiction that it is extremely unfair to characterize Italo-Americans as more prone to organized crime than members of any other group. And furthermore, to do so is inherently bigoted and partakes of a hatred which is in itself un-American. Did I do all right, boss?
That was perfect. That was beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got that off. As far as the as far as the rest of it goes, well, there was certainly in the 40s there was an attempt to unify the families across the United States. Lucky Luciano and the oh golly, I can't think of the guy's name now. What do you know? Which is probably why I'm still alive. I can't remember his
the
name.
Jewish guy?
No, this is an Italian.
Vito Genovese? No.
No. This guy turned state's evidence. He became a stool pigeon, and oh man, it was a very, very, very famous. His confessions came out in a book.
I can't imagine.
The Valachi papers.
Huh. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, the Valachi papers. That was it. So they elected a capo del tutti capi and all that, and they had sort of a unified hit squad that was the famous Murder Incorporated.
Wow.
And this, I mean, it was interesting. I don't claim to be a great authority on organized crime by any stretch, but there was an attempt at one point to unite the families and all that kind of thing, and really get a lock on things. Its penetration of government was more local than federal, to say the least. But there were certain local governments that were, for a while anyway, completely under the thumb. But the face of organized crime has changed considerably. It still exists. I mean, obviously, there are really crime families of the good old school. But there are Chinese gangs, there are Colombians, Mexicans. It's become a very multi-ethnic free-for-all. And, organized crime, like voter fraud, is endemic to societies of our kind. And like them, you keep fighting it, you keep fighting it, you keep fighting it. You'll never get rid of it completely, but you can certainly limit it as much as you can. Yeah, but it was the Valachi papers that I've been trying to think of.
I see. Alrighty. Abraham says, "Greetings, Vincent and Charles. I have a question regarding Catholic teaching on just war and conquest. What is the Church's teaching on acquiring territory through coercion instead of voluntary annexation or marriage? I know that conquest usually happened through inheritance disputes or, in our modern era, claiming that the territory was previously a part of the claimant's territory, or a ruler may just end up and say, 'I want that land, so let's go and get it.' While such events did not always end in combat, still, what is the Church's opinion or teaching on extending the borders outward, perhaps against that nation's wishes? Just war theory seems to narrow fighting down to reasons of defense or removing a tyrannical government. Are there any examples of the Church approving of conquest? Cheers and God bless."
Well, yeah, the Reconquista and the Reconquista, the Crusades, the initial, though not subsequent, English invasion of Ireland, And these were all done to secure the rights of the church. And in the case of Spain and the Holy Land, to liberate territories that had been conquered by the Muslims at various times. But beyond that, no. It is snatch and grab is never just.
Yeah. Yep.
Now you may make the argument, as we did, getting ready to attack Iraq, that they were going to attack us, but this is called a preemptive strike, and I don't really think it's terribly moral. You may remember, you may not, but when we first attacked Iraq in the Second War, I said we should be apologizing to Japan for getting so excited over 1941.
That's very interesting.
Well, I mean, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. We attacked a country that had not attacked us first. They had no weapons of mass destruction, but we weren't sure about that at the time. But you know, Saddam was not behind 9/11. We knew that. The Iraq War was not, in my humble opinion, a justified war. Now, the first one is a different story. You could say that because they did the snatch and grab with Kuwait, we were justified. But that's another issue. I think certainly, though, the first Iraq War was, if you can justify it, it was more justifiable than the second. And I was not really all that keen on the first one either, frankly. But at least in that case, they had already attacked Kuwait. In the second case, they hadn't attacked anybody.
Yeah.
So, and this, of course, is right now the Russians are throwing this back in our face.
All right. Final set of questions is from Kentucky Traditionalist. He says, Happy Jesuitide Charles and Vincent. Fun story before the questions. I'm currently a student teacher at a public school in uber Protestant, mostly Baptist, Western Kentucky. On the Monday after Super Bowl Sunday, I decided to tell the kids that yesterday, in addition to being Super Bowl Sunday, was Septuagesima Sunday, and then asked them what that meant. The looks and audible groans of confusion that I got from my sixth graders were priceless. I, of course, then explained to them that it meant Carnival and Mardi Gras season was underway and that they should start indulging in innocent pleasures because Lent was fast approaching. They had no idea what I was talking about, but one boy decided to share a story about how he was almost run over by a Mardi Gras parade float in New Orleans. Baby steps, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
My first question concerns Carnival and various ways that it's celebrated throughout the world. Will Charles give us a rundown of the various Carnival season customs and traditions for each region of the world? From Quebec and Louisiana to Latin America to France, Iberia, Italy, Low Countries, Germany, and the former Habsburg Empire. Charles, go ahead. Go ahead and tell us Carnival. Wait, what?
I said no. We'd be here all bloody night. All right, Kentucky Traditionalists, let me explain something. There are a lot of customs of that sort. What I suggest you do is go to Wikipedia and look up Carnivale, and you will see that they have a ton of information and links to carnival celebrations in Spain, Germany. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, they've got very good coverage of it, but we would be here all night, literally, if I went into any detail. Suffice to say that Louisiana is the hometown of Mardi Gras in the United States. New Orleans, Louisiana in general, does Mardi Gras. There's mostly Gulf Coast cities and some of the Mississippi River cities. St. Louis does it. St. Genevieve. And Quebec, of course, does it as a sort of winter carnival because it's always cold up there when it comes along. The carnivals in Nice, Rio, uh, Barcelona, Venice. Just, I mean, look it up. Wikipedia. They give you good information in this area and all sorts of other things, other things to look up. Carnival in Rio, carnival here, carnival there. I mean, you could write it. You could literally cut and paste a book out of what Wikipedia has on the subject.
Wow. Very good. Very good. He's got one other question.
No.
What?
I said, yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
What?
Before the Reformation, what was Carnival like in the British Isles and Scandinavia? Are there movements to reestablish those festivities?
Well, to answer your question, it was pretty festive. A lot of eating and drinking and partying, like everywhere else. But they were very big in particular on Shrove Tuesday. And this is true both in Scandinavia and in England, and it's a custom they've kept up. Baking pancakes, crepes. They're thin in England. In Scandinavia, they tend to serve them with berries, cherries and lingonberries and stuff. But that's the biggest Mardi Gras custom that they've retained in those areas. The celebration of them comes and goes. I mean, some people get a little bit more into it than others, but it's not completely dead by any long shot.
All right. Actually, there is one more question to end the show on. I like to end the show on something that looks forward a little bit. So we got
the death and destruction question.
No, not the death and destruction question. No, we like happy fun questions.
The we're all gonna die, so who cares question.
No, not that one. Not that one. All right, a question from Blake, who says, Blessed Septuagesima to you both. What Lenten practices were expected or common in traditional rite, and what can we do to experience the most authentic Lent? Oh, that's right. Lent is coming up. Imagine
Lent that's what Mardi Gras is about. It's coming up Ash Wednesday.
That's right.
Tomorrow is Quinquagesima Sunday. Monday is Lundi Gras. Tuesday is Mardi Gras. And then at the stroke of midnight, Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday, and then Lent begins. I'm always reminded of the old joke about the fellow who comes home from work and his wife doesn't have any meat served for him. It's all, pasta and stuff. And he says, "Where's my steak?" She says, "It's Lent." And he says, "Well, go and get it then. I'm hungry."
Got it. Very good.
All right. So, well, to answer your question, the Fridays of Lent were, of course, days of total abstinence. But also the Fridays, now this was the way it was, say, in 1964. But the Wednesdays of Lent were days of partial abstinence, which meant you had meat and only one meal. And a lot of people kept Fridays and Wednesdays also as days of fasting. Now, what fasting meant in 1964 was one normal-sized meal and two small meals that together did not make a single meal. Sometime in the 19th century, though, that was the result of a loosening, because before that, You didn't have meat or dairy products or eggs, except in some places on Sunday. You didn't have them at all. Uh, and you fasted every day except Sunday, and that fasting was one normal size meal and one less than half size meal, not being called a collation. When that expanded to the later thing, I don't know. It was gradual. Um, but in the Middle Ages, as in the Eastern churches today, it's very strict. No meat, no butter, no oil, no cheese, no eggs.
And if you consider how pretty much everybody probably had an active lifestyle, there's a farming or caring for livestock and just some sort of subsistence things, your caloric intake is, or the fuel you're going to need is pretty substantial.
I'll say.
So that must have been quite a mortification, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it was. It was. So that was how they kept Lent back then. But since we're in this last weekend of Mardi Gras and the beginning of Lent, what can I tell you? Laissez les bon temps rouler. Celebrate as well as you can up till that stroke of midnight, and then jump into Lent with all 4 feet. We have this Lent, a lot of uncertainty in front of us. On March 6th, all of the restrictions in Austria are going to vanish. Life is returning as far as COVID goes.
That's right. Again, another thing we were talking about, so the Supreme Court of Austria probably struck down the mandate?
No. What's happened? It's interesting. The enforced vax law.
Yeah.
They demanded that the government answer 10 questions by February 18th.
Yeah.
They have not answered them. Now, the restrictions are a separate issue from the anti-vax law. But all the restrictions are being knocked down on March the 6th. My suspicion is that part of the reason, if not all of it, that that's being done is that they'll quietly withdraw the vax bill and hope that with everybody rejoicing over having their lives back, they won't notice.
Wow.
That's my guess, but we'll see.
Okay.
Anyhow, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It really does. It doesn't make a lot of sense as far as maintaining the whole COVID regime now. And of course, what do we find just as soon as the COVID regime recedes into memory? Now we get to deal with Ukraine. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we have not here an abiding city. All the drivel we're going through, and that we'll continue to go through until we breathe our last, is simply the historical background against which you and I have to work out our salvation in fear and trembling. And joy. And joy. Never forget that part. Right now, I'm worried about friends in Ukraine. I'm worried about the outcome, as God knows so many other people are. But I remind myself that so did my parents during World War II, and so did my grandparents during World War One. And so did cousin Alfonso during the St. Valentine's Day massacre. There's always the what?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Moving along. Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is that generations of people have gone through these sorts of things and lived with it and dealt with it, and so shall we. You all right, boss? You seemed a little taken aback
Yeah,
just
I
a minute
was a little
ago.
taken aback at okay,
At what?
something.
This is something said?
Okay, anyhow, yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. It's been a really great, substantial episode. I appreciate all your thoughts on the Ukraine war. Obviously, we're all praying that
It ended
it
quickly.
just ends quickly and preserve as much life as possible. Honestly,
Yeah, and I've told everybody I know, if you're Catholic, pray to Kaiser Karl. If you're Orthodox, pray to Tsar Nicholas for peace, for an end to it, and for an end, the most equitable peace possible that allows both sides to pull out without losing too much face. That well, it seems hard to imagine right now. A friend of mine who is Russian and who, in almost everything, supports Russia against anything is ever said against it. He wrote me and he said, "I feel sick unto death
mm,
over this." And my response was, "Well, now you know what it's like being an American. Don't worry about it." Which, oddly enough, he said almost cheered him up,
mm,
almost. But be of good cheer, ladies and gentlemen, because after Lent, after Holy Week, after the crucifixion, is Easter. And I don't mean that just chronologically. It's true in our lives. It's true of the great macrocosm through which we have to live. This too shall pass. And please God, ladies and gentlemen, if we make it to heaven, all of this drivel will seem like a bad dream.
mm. Okay, and
So I got a question for you, boss, since
yeah,
you're so smart tonight.
yeah,
What is it if it's Monday?
it's off the menu.
Oh yeah, okay, fine. But whose is the soul you save?
Well, it just may be your own.
God bless everyone and good night. Or as Edward R. Murrow would say, since you're in wartime, right?
Ah,
Yeah, see, I get to do the whole Edward R. Murrow thing.
okay.
This is London. I get to do it. I
Yeah,
get to do it.
go ahead.
All right. Good night and good luck.